Okay, so everybody who's got a speaking part is here, and it is 2 o'clock by the little clock in the corner bottom right-hand screen. So it's my pleasure as Andrew Gold, the chair of Airedale NHS Foundation Trust, to welcome members of the public, colleagues and governors to this Airedale NHS Foundation Trust annual members meeting for the year ended 31st of March 22. So welcome to this event. It's apologies that we're having to host it virtually as for the last 2 years because of COVID. Our aim is in due course to get back to an in-person member event at the Trust, and we'll obviously look to do that when we're able to do so safely and appropriately. As we're meeting virtually, there are certain etiquettes that I just need to confirm with you for the purposes of this meeting. So I'd ask you all to mute your microphones, that if you want to speak, to use the hands up facility. If you do use the hands up facility, only speak when I invite you to come into the conversation. And you are able to use the chat facility for questions. We will take all questions at the end with one exception, and that's the questions for Gareth Mills, our external audit partner, who's joining us for that part of the meeting, but is due to leave soon after that part. So all questions at the end with the exception of any questions for Gareth. We do want to make this as interactive as possible. It's always great to hear from members. We do value those questions. So if you've got things that you'd like to raise, please do raise them. We will also are recording this event, and we will publish on our website, the Trust website, the recording of the event and also the questions and their appropriate responses as well. So if we don't get a chance to answer all the questions during the course of this discussion, we will by the end or in due course on the Trust website. So that covers the introduction. I'm now going to ask the Deputy Chief Executive, Robert Aitchison, to take us through the highlights of the previous financial year 21-22. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all, albeit virtually today. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes or so just talking you through what I think genuinely are a number of highlights actually in what again has been a challenging period for the organisation, but I hope you'll all agree with me. I think the organisation has more than met the challenges that it's been faced with during the last 12 months or so. So just a bit of a reminder, I'm sure most people involved today know at least a fair bit about the organisation, but just a bit of a reminder there around the scale of the hospital. I think just reminding ourselves again just what a huge geography we cover here at Airedale, and that's stretching right up to the top of North Yorkshire, but equally as important, the representation left out of the hospital into kind of Keighley Town Centre, Wharfdale and other nearby areas. So really large, diverse population, again, just reflecting there on the number of volunteers that support the daily activities of the organisation. Just moving on to the next slide, I think it was just important to break down some of the activity in numbers. So you can see there's real diversity in what we do as an organisation, albeit the kind of obvious A&E through the hospital in terms of some of the attendances and inpatient capacity that we have, but also just touching on again the spread of the organisation. So last year we grew again and we delivered almost 45,000 virtual contacts through the service that we provide in collaboration with Involve under the Medicare Care Home banner. And again, just touching there on the number of births that we continue to provide, which I think plays a really crucial role for the organisation in providing a really broad core offer to our population, which includes maternity, paediatrics, and other medical and surgical specialties. And you can see there on the left there, we've just given a little bit of a flavour of how we spend the money that we're given and that we're commissioned to provide in our organisation. So I'll just move on to the next slide. I think one of the things that's been really kind of welcome actually during COVID and coming out of COVID in particular has been the increased focus on inequalities. So I think this slide is one that we've used across our Bradford District Craven Place on a fairly regular basis, and it just demonstrates the ongoing significant inequalities that we have in our population here. Equally, we have inequalities of a different type, of kind of as far as kind of the North Yorkshire population that we serve. And I think it's been something that through our strategy over the last 12 months, we've taken an increasingly larger focus on, and we will do moving forward. Not just the role that we have in providing care to people who come through the doors of our organisation, but also that indirect impact that we can have as an anchor institute within the Bradford District Craven Place. Thank you. Just next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to use the kind of the 5 Ps that we have here in the organisation under our strategy banner, just to highlight some of the really key things that have happened during the last 12 months. So I think it would be remiss not to talk about the ongoing complexity of managing COVID within our organisation and population. We're really proud of the work that we've done in the organisation, managing that complexity alongside some of the things that we continue to do during COVID over the last couple of years. It seems like a long time ago, but as early as last Christmas, January and February, we were dealing with our 4th wave of COVID and that kind of Omicron variant that we were faced with. Our teams responded brilliantly to the pressures again. And alongside that, we delivered up to March this year our 50,000th vaccination here from Airedale as part of the offer to our local population and to our people working here. Really significant achievement. And I think it's just worth reminding ourselves that response was stood up in a matter of weeks, and it was our people volunteering to come forward to support that made it so crucial to the success of it. A number of other highlights. I think it's just worth calling out the ongoing support that our maternity services are playing into the kind of the national and local work around the response to Ockenden recommendations and report, and also the ongoing success of our endoscopy and pathology team, who both achieved reaccreditation this year alongside other significant pressures that they were facing. Next slide, please. Key part of our strategy really is how we develop and kind of enhance our services to make them better for the future. And this progressive banner that this operates under has a number of examples again this year. So I would highlight the significant work that our teams did in setting up a COVID medicines delivery unit, and the really important work that unit has done for people who have got kind of more complex COVID who could benefit from that input, so that our team continue to operate that service, and it's a real success on behalf of our place here in Bradford District Craven. And again, most of you will be very well familiar with the Hope for Tomorrow buses, which out and about in the local population. We acquired our 2nd one of those this year, which again was a significant achievement. And hopefully you'll see that out and about. You might, those of you that paid an interest in that will know it's a subtle difference. It's a state-of-the-art unit, and it's providing care out and about in our communities for those patients with cancer and oncology needs. Thank you. Next slide. Again, I think from a people perspective, again, this year, it's been a really crucial priority for us as an organisation. We know that our people have, during the last 2-3 years, have dealt with kind of significant challenges and have kind of risen to the challenge. So again, this slide just gives a flavour of the things that we want to highlight this year of the last 12 months. Highlights in particular, I would say, our continued inclusion groups. So we have 4 groups within the organisation which continue to do great work to highlight equality and diversity within the organisation. And we continued our reciprocal mentoring programme, which is typically kind of senior managers within the organisation partnering up with others from the organisation and having a series of kind of mentoring meetings and development meetings where they learn from each other. It's a fantastic programme. And again, we've got a number of other wellbeing programmes that are in place across the organisation that they've continued to strengthen during the last 12 months. And I would just highlight as well our finance team. As much as we talk lots and rightly about our clinical services in the organisation, our finance team won a national award for diversity and inclusion this year. So we're really proud of the work that they're doing. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so again, I think this slide really just highlights the complexity, I think, in some instances, and the amount of work that's going on under the partnership banner. So I think Airedale, again, during this last 12 months has been really proud to, I think, be a good partner, not just for our local population, but for those organisations supporting our population nearby. So not only have we been a really active, I would say, an influential partner within the Act as One programme across Bradford District and Craven, we've also played into the West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership. Those of you probably recognise that as the ICS, or the Integrated Care Board, and also, just as importantly, the West Yorkshire Association of Acute Trusts. So I think Airedale are very, very good at partnership. I think very good at representing our local population, and I think we're really proud of what we've done during the last 12 months to continue that great work. I would just highlight also our joint ventures, so Integrated Pathology Services, which is a partnership between the Trust here, Bradford Teaching, and now Harrogate, has gone from strength to strength this year, as has our Medicare Care Home Service, which I highlighted earlier. Okay, next slide, thank you. And then just focusing on perhaps kind of the most important element of all, really, so our population. So significant work with our local communities, again, during this last 12 months, and I think focus particularly on staff, patient wellbeing, and seeing how we can support those people living within our population, of which our staff are a very large proportion of. So 2 key appeals this year within the organisation. So we had the Make a Splash appeal for the hydrotherapy pool, which has now been launched and is live within the organisation again. And we had an intensive care appeal, which contributed to the new critical care unit, which has just recently gone live within the last couple of months. And so that appeal helped support furnishing the relatives room and the staff room on the unit. So fantastic work going on this year. And I think that key point I just highlight there around the anchor institution, the role that Airedale has, not only in providing care to people coming through the organisation, but those living and receiving care within our wider population. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And just to kind of really finish from me, I think they say a picture speaks 1,000 words, really. I think this just highlights some of the diversity and complexity of the work going on inside and outside the organisation. And we're really proud of everything we've done in the organisation, that our people have done during the last 12 months, and look forward to what happens during the next 12 months to come. And that's all from me. So I think I'm handing over now to Donna.
Afternoon, everyone. So my name is Donna Cassidy. I'm the Interim Director of Finance, and I joined the organisation just towards the end of August. Next slide, please, Katie. So I'll just be talking you through the 21-22 financial accounts. So we ended the year with a group surplus of 2.81 million, and the cash in the bank at the 31st of March was 29.522 million. So within the financial position last year, we received 4.6 million of elective recovery fund that was specifically focused around elective recovery within the organisation. And I'm pleased to say that we ended the year with an unqualified audit opinion, which Gareth will go through the details of after my slides from our external auditors. So this position, just to give a quick comparison to the financial year 2021, you'll see there that both income and expenditure did increase considerably. That was predominantly income that came through from our commissioners around growth around and specifically focused around elective recovery. Also worth noting that the surplus that we reported was the operating surplus that we reported was similar to the previous year. The overall surplus was a much improvement on the previous year, where we had a large impairment due to our estate being revalued as we understood the challenges of the RAC estate better in last financial year. Next slide, please, Katie. So this just gives an overview of where we get our income from. So most of our income comes from clinical commissioning groups, which has moved into being integrated care boards and NHS England, so it's just over 82%. And the pie chart on the right there gives a bit further breakdown of where that income comes from. Also worth noting last year that we got specific funding for COVID-19. So we received 3.1 million of income for COVID-19. And in addition to that, we received free PPE from the government throughout the year. And we also received 0.2 million of capital equipment donations directly from the government. In terms of where we spent our money, consistent with previous years, the majority of our funding is spent on pay. So just over 71% of our expenditure is on pay and was in the previous financial year. The expenditure around COVID-19 that we were specifically reimbursed for was broadly split between pay and clinical support costs. The majority of that was to do with testing for COVID-19, but that also included the costs of our vaccination programme. Slide, please, Katie. So we had another good year in terms of strategic capital investment into the organisation. So we had a capital plan of 23.91 million and actually spent 28.73, resulting in an overspend of 4.82 million. That was an overspend that was agreed with our West Yorkshire ICS partners and also NHS England. and it allowed us to do the development on the site in terms of the new modular ward block in response to some of the RAC challenges. It was also funded in terms of cash from central government. Next slide, please, Katie. So here just gives a further breakdown in terms of what our capital spend was last year. So our biggest area was the works that we did around RAC, which was predominantly the modular building that you'll now see at the back of our site, which came to 16.7 million. The other one I draw your attention to is the 4.9 million we invested in the new barn theatre, which you can also see on the site at the moment. Next slide, please, Katie. So looking ahead, we are in a new financial framework for 22-23, and the financial framework does continue to build on the system-based approach to both funding and planning and working with partners in the West Yorkshire ICS. So we have developed a balanced plan for the financial year 22-23. I would say that we're not immune to the challenges that we're all facing in terms of inflation at the moment, and it is a very challenging plan. As such, we've got a waste reduction target. So in terms of efficiencies, we need to deliver 10.7 million this coming financial year. And as such, as costs increase, we do continue to monitor our cash pressures, our cash balances closely to ensure that we remain sustainable. Next slide, please, Katie. So looking ahead, we do continue working with systems and partners, both in terms of revenue allocation of resources, but also capital allocation of resources. And in terms of RAC, we've been given a further £20 million budget to spend on capital for RAC in 22-23, and we continue to work with regional and national colleagues in terms of helping to secure funding for plans for the future on a new hospital at the existing site. So just in conclusion, we are focused on ensuring that we're not making short-term decisions that could lead to unexpected consequences and challenges longer term. We are focused on long-term sustainability of the trust and specifically long-term efficiency delivery. And we continue to pursue all avenues to secure a future funding source to alleviate the RAC issues on the site. Okay, and I will hand over to Gareth from Grant Thornton.
Thank you very much, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for the opportunity to feedback on our role as external auditors to the Trust. So for those not familiar with me, I'm Gareth Mills. I'm the key audit partner from Grant Thornton who signs off the opinion on your annual accounts. So the purpose of my session, as in previous years, is twofold. So one is just a bit of a session around the role of external audit in the NHS in the public sector. And then the second part, just to draw out some of the highlights and key messages from our audit work on both your accounts audit and the value for money arrangements review that we perform each year. Next slide, please. Has everyone's slide moved on? Because mine appears to have paused, but I will carry on the basis that hopefully all your screens have moved on to the next slide, which says, what is the role of external audit? So I'll carry on. So the role of external audit is to provide independent assurance to the Council of Governors to ensure that the accounts give a true and fair view of your assets and liabilities, the things you own and the things you owe out to others, and also to provide a commentary on your use of resources. In addition to that, in the public sector, external auditors in the public sector have what's called special reporting powers. So if we had any particular areas of concern that we felt that the Trust or the board weren't dealing with, we can make a referral to NHS England, or we can issue a report in the public interest. Just to be really clear, we've not had to do either of those things in respect of Airedale for 21-22 or in previous years. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we perform our role, well, I very much like to see our relationship with the Trust as a year-long round role. So, we met regularly with Donna's predecessor as Director of Finance and her senior finance team throughout the year to discuss any accounting and governance issues. We'll typically issue our audit plan in March. And then in that April to June period, that's our detailed year-end audit process before we sign off the accounts in June. and then our value for money work is typically concluded in July and August, and that results in a report called the Auditor's Annual Report that was finalised with the Trust in the middle of August. Next slide, please. Who considers our work? So our primary relationship is with the Audit Committee, with Ian Knight as Chair of Audit. They consider all our reports. We confirm our independence to them. Obviously, it's very important to have an external auditor who can give an independent, objective view on the Trust's arrangements. They also consider our performance in terms of the quality of our work. The board obviously approve the annual accounts. They would consider any non-audit work that we may be asked to do. But just to be really clear, we've not done any non-audit or advisory consultancy type work at Airedale in 21-22 or indeed in previous years. In terms of the Council of Governors, obviously one of your key roles and responsibilities is to appoint or remove the external auditor, and we were delighted to be reappointed in the spring of this year for a further 3 years as your external auditor. And obviously, we would communicate to you on any significant issues if we felt that management or the audit committee weren't addressing them. But again, just to be clear, we've not had anything of that nature that's required me to go straight to you as a Council of Governors. NHS England, as a regulator, they get copies of our key year-end reports, our ISA 260 report on your accounts, and our report on your VFM arrangements. Next slide, please. So in terms of key findings of the 21-22 accounts audit, well, I think the main thing to say to you as members is we concluded our audit work, and I was in a position to issue an unqualified or a clean audit opinion. So that's the audit opinion that organisations want to receive that demonstrates that their accounts give a true and fair view. The working papers were of a good standard in most areas, although there were some areas to strengthen in terms of areas of estimate and judgment which the Trust had made on certain balances, which I'll come on to in a moment. We do hold regular meetings with the finance team throughout the year and during the year-end audit, and that helps to progress and ensure an efficient audit process. There were no major weaknesses in financial systems, and there were no material audit adjustments to the draft reported numbers that we were provided with. But as ever with an audit of a significantly sized organisation like Airedale, there were a small number of presentational adjustments that we agreed with the finance team. Next slide, please. My screen appears to have been slightly delayed and is catching up, so I'll work on the basis that you can all see the one with the sort of yellow background. So in terms of our key accounts issues, great, it's come through on mine as well now. So one is the valuation of your estate. So as Don had mentioned, that was a really big issue in the prior year when you had the revaluation off the back of the RAC issue that led to a significant impairment in 2021. Clearly that continued to be an area of our focus in terms of our audit work in 21-22 to make sure that valuation remained materially accurate. And then the other area of focus for us last year was in the area of estimate and judgment. So these are areas where the Trust is making an estimate and a judgment in terms of what level of income to recognise and what level of expenditure to recognise. And at Airedale, in common with all the NHS providers in 21-22's accounts, we saw an increased level of these areas of judgment. So income was being deferred into the current year, 22-23, and levels of expenditure being recognised in the 21-22 accounts. There was a lot of audit work, a lot of discussions with the Trust on in that area. Ultimately, we formed a view that just over £1.5 million of expenditure that was in the Trust's accounts we didn't believe was appropriate to be in there, but management took the view that they weren't going to adjust for that on the grounds of materiality. If that adjustment had been processed, your surplus would have been higher. But ultimately, auditors work to materiality. Our materiality at Airedale is roughly about 4 million. And clearly that figure was significantly below that. So whilst we reported it as a proposed adjustment, the fact that it wasn't adjusted didn't prevent me from issuing a clean audit opinion on your accounts. Next slide, please. So the other key area of our work is the value for money arrangements review. So 21-22 was the second year of the sort of wider value for money arrangements review that the National Audit Office introduced in the prior year. And it asks external auditors in the public sector to look at arrangements in place in three particular areas. So one around your financial sustainability, secondly in terms of governance, risk management, internal controls, and then thirdly around how you improve economy, efficiency and effectiveness. It's known as the 3 E's, and effectively looking at your service delivery, your performance, your outcomes. So I think key message to take away from this for members is that we didn't identify any significant weaknesses in the trust's arrangements. So that is a positive outcome for Airedale. Next slide, please. So again, that seems to have gone on a slight delay for me, but there were two areas that we raised some improvement recommendations on. So one was around ensuring sort of current and future savings targets are realistic and achievable. So as Donna's already mentioned, there is a significantly higher savings requirement for 22-23 of 10.7 million. So that's proportionately higher than the trust has had to deal with in previous years. And there was a forecast to deliver roughly 60% of that when we concluded our work at the beginning of August. We are aware from discussions with Donna subsequent to that over the recent weeks that position has improved, and clearly we'll be monitoring that closely with Donna and her team as the financial year progresses. And then the second area where we raised a recommendation was around compliance with the declarations of interest policy. So making sure people are declaring things up front in the appropriate timescales in terms of any sort of conflicts of interest and other interests that they may have. So the compliance rate we thought was relatively low, and the trust we know is taking action to increase that. Linking the declarations process in with the annual performance review, and we know that internal audit are going to be looking at that as the year progresses as well. So I think overall, it was a challenging year for the finance team and for audit. Clean opinion issued on the accounts, which is a good outcome, and no significant weaknesses identified on the VFM work, which again is a good outcome, but clearly some areas for us to engage with the finance team on in the current year. So I'll pause at that point and happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you to all the presenters for their commentary today. So you've heard the headlines and the key features from 21-22, and then from Rob, and then you've heard from Donna the financials that flow from that, and now you've heard from Gareth the auditors given a clean opinion on both the financial statements and the value for money assessment, all of which is incredibly positive. So particularly for Gareth, although I realise that it may be intrinsically linked and might involve Donna and possibly even Rob, are there any questions on the financials and questions of the Trust's external auditor at this stage before Gareth leaves the meeting? If so, please use the hands up facility or the chat facility. There have been some questions submitted in advance, but they're not in relation to the audit. So just give it a little bit longer. And do keep thinking about the questions that you might want to ask about the future and other things that you're about to hear from shortly. So it would appear that there are no questions on the financials and of Gareth. So on that basis, thank you again. And we'll now invite Karen Ellison, the lead governor, to talk us through the Council of Governors Membership and Elections report.
Just get my microphone on. It's pretty key, isn't it? So I'm Karen Ellison. I'm the lead governor for the Council of Governors here at Airedale, a position that I've held for a couple of years, unfortunately throughout COVID, so it's been slightly difficult. One of my tasks is to run through the membership report, which I'm required to do at the annual members meeting. So if you bear with me, I've got quite a lot of figures for you to look at. But anyway, hopefully it'll give you a flavour of what the Council of Governors has been up to during the last year. Thank you. The next slide shows our Council of Governors. I'm sorry that the pictures are quite small. but it shows the structure chart of our current Council of Governors, which was effective from the 1st of June 2022. There's one exception, Andrew Wilkinson, who took over from Alan Walker. So Alan had to step down because of personal reasons, and Alan Wilkinson then became the Governor for Settle and Mid Craven, and we're very grateful to Andrew for stepping in. He was the next highest polled candidate, and so was invited to take up that role, and we're very grateful to you, Andrew, for accepting that. While we're on the subject, I'd like to thank very much the retiring governors for the work that they've undertaken with the Trust over the last 12 months. And we certainly miss you already. The council, you can see, is made up of 12 publicly elected governors. There's 4 governors drawn from local councils and the voluntary sector, and 4 governors representing hospital staff. Unfortunately, a couple of those remain vacant at the moment. Having governors from these different backgrounds means we have a good mix of experience, which helps us in our holding to account duties, which is one of the main duties of the governors. Annual elections for the council took place this year, and a number of new people joined us. So it's very nice to have some new faces, and it's very nice to have some new voices on the council, which will hopefully bring things forward too. Next slide, please. Sorry, my slide isn't moving on. Catching up, I think. Yes, we've got the blue wheel of death. This slide represents an overview of our activities during the last 12 months. We've continued to hold the non-executive directors to account through regular meetings as captured on this slide. We've also been kept abreast of national planning arrangements and other key matters impacting on the Trust. We've also been involved, quite excitingly, in the involvement of the chair and non-executive director appraisal process, as well as recruitment of a non-executive director and, more latterly, the new chief executive. We've also taken part, as Gareth has said, in the external auditor review process, eventually electing to reappoint Grant Thornton, and we're very pleased that they're still with us with their wealth of previous experience of the Trust. I'm afraid that COVID-19 has continued to impact on our ability to talk to our members and to hold public events, which has been a real shame. And it's also one of the things that helped governors interact with members was to talk to patients in the outpatient department, and unfortunately we've not been able to do that. We have been inviting feedback through networks, through social media, through the patient participation groups, but really there's nothing more helpful than actually talking to people in person around the hospital. So hopefully that will continue in the months to come once we're fully opened up. This is a pie, as you can see, a pie chart of our ethnicity, and it shows the vast majority of our members are describing themselves as white. These figures are accurate at the 31st of March 2022, i.e. the end of the financial year. Altogether, we've got quite a healthy 10,640 public members. Unfortunately, that's about 130 fewer than last year, and our aim is really to recruit as many members as we can that have an interest in the work of the Trust. So if I can ask any members on the call that have connections around the area, please do encourage your friends and family to join the Trust as membership. So they'd need to get in touch with the membership office. I'm sure you remember doing it yourself. It's a pretty easy process. I mean, one of our membership strategies is to help develop the representativeness of the membership. And this slide, as I said, shows the representation in terms of ethnicity. There are a number of numbers behind the colours. So a total of 8,236 members describe themselves as white, which is 77% of our total membership. And actually within the district, about 90% describe themselves as white. So we're not too far off representativeness in terms of membership. 76 are mixed race, which is about 1% of our membership and also about 1% of the district average. There are 1,014 Asian or Asian birth members, and this is about 9% as opposed to a district average of 2%. So they're well represented, that group. There's 63 Black or Black British, which is just under 1% with a district average of 0.5%, so representative again. And then 24 as other ethnic group, which is again representative. We don't have data on 1,227 members who have chosen not to fill in that box on their membership application. So I think in conclusion, you can see that our ethnicity data does show that our membership it's broadly representative of the population. Next slide, please. This shows our membership according to age. We invite membership from the age of 14, but as you can see in that very young age group, there's only 2. If you look at in the 2 youngest age brackets, then we've actually got a total of 106, which is not too bad. I mean, that age group doesn't seek medical input that often, so it's pretty impressive that we've got that small number anyway. You can see obviously that the majority of the membership are in the over 60s, and then it's pretty even throughout the other age groups. Interestingly, there's quite a lot that haven't stated their age either. Just to go back to comparing what the numbers look like in the district as a whole, and there's about 19% in the district are age over 60, well, between 60 and 74. I think we differ, so I mean, looking at that as an overall, we differ a bit slightly compared to the district, but I think that's because many of the service users are in those older age brackets. Thank you. Next slide, please. This shows our gender splits. It's probably not surprising that women are very interested in their health and men less so. We need to change that. But there's also another small number that haven't given us their gender, and we do find this in the place that I work. We don't get all the data in the gender brackets. I think you know, some people like their privacy, and that's absolutely fine. So next slide, please. This shows our various constituencies and how many members there are in each of those constituencies. My own constituent is the Ilkley and Wharfdale, where there's 804. And this data's accurate to the 31st of March again. Sorry, all the data's that date. Majority of members live in Keighley, Skipton and the rest of England. And rest of England, just to explain that, is any area not within the constituency area stipulated in the table. So quite healthy numbers, I think. What are our priorities? And some of these have been difficult with COVID, and we hope to get back on track in the coming months. But we want to ensure that the public membership is representative of the communities we serve. And as I've mentioned before, to invite members of the public who've got a genuine interest in healthcare to become members of the Trust. We want to communicate more with the membership and the public about the Trust services and the future plans. We get feedback from our members either in person or via our website and from the local PPGs. And we want to ensure that engagement activities activities that we do have in the coming months are fit for purpose and are engaging for the membership and do continue to grow the membership. I think we always show this at the annual members meetings, but it shows how the information from you, our members, flows from the governors to members of the board and back again. So here we see we obtain the views from the members and the public. That generates questions at governor-only meetings, and then following this, we devise questions to ask of the NEDs at the Council of Governors meetings where we hold them to account, and their answers we then feed back to the members of the public and the members of the trust, and so it goes round. So if you have any questions that you would like us to pose to the NEDs, please do get in touch with your local governor. What have we been doing this year? Well, we hold council meetings and gig meetings, their governor involvement group meetings virtually. They've worked really well, and despite the fact that we had initial teething problems with IT, I think, you know, most of us managed to meet without any hiccups. We do have informal meetings with the execs and the non-execs, and particularly with the trust chairman, Andrew. We've supported the trust to promote the governor roles during the election process, and that is always a big part of the year when it comes to elections. So that was really interesting, and we're really pleased to have filled a lot more positions this time. And volunteers from the council go to observe public board and the committee meetings virtually, and then we can feed back to our fellow governors on the results of those meetings. So that's what we've been doing. We hope to do more in the coming months, as I said, particularly with respect to involving the public in some non-virtual activities. So keep a lookout. We'll be in touch with you. And I'd like to invite Faluki, our new Chief Executive, to hop onto the screen now and talk to us about looking towards the future. Thank you, Faluki.
Thanks, Karen. So good afternoon, everybody. My name's Faluki Ajayi, and I'm the Chief Executive here at Airedale NHS Foundation Trust. Most of you will know that I started in post on the 1st of April and have therefore been here for just under 6 months. So I want to talk about the future and our ambitions in terms of the next steps. My introduction to the organisation was a very positive one, and one that I expected. Definitely felt the friendly welcome of colleagues. An exciting organisation to have joined, with lots that have been done on service transformation, and there's a lot to be proud of and much more ambition that we have to build on in terms of how we maximise every opportunity we have, including making sure that we do the very best with our community services, for example. There's work ongoing around digital innovation and our people development, as well as the estate's modernisation. And I will spend a bit of time on our ambitions around that. There's a lot of work ongoing and that we are committed to as a system partner, both within our immediate locality, but also across the region. And we are establishing ourselves nationally, both with a range of agencies, including NHS providers, NHS Confederation, and indeed working with NHS England around what new hospitals might look like in the future. But there will also inevitably some key challenges, which I will come on to. But just suffice to say, I'm enjoying working with all colleagues and have had a warm welcome from the executive team as well. So if I move on to the priorities for 2022-2023, we are now into the second half of the year virtually, and we have the ongoing planning process for the year after 23-24 is going to be commencing very shortly. Our focus really is around how we continue our work on the well-being and resilience of our people, our colleagues. And for me, that includes how we support each other through the current cost of living crisis that we're all seeing. And we know that that has a major impact on all of us, but particularly our colleagues who are probably lower and middle income. And we also know that there will be an impact on our patients and citizens that we support. So we are looking at ways in which we can support and offer signposting for colleagues in this regard. We begin the winter vaccination season is now upon us, and the work is now underway to mobilise and make sure that as many people are protected with this from the seasonal infections that we have come to expect. Like I said, I will spend some time talking about the key issues around managing our estate and the case of change that we are developing. We are also going to be focusing on the launch of our EPI, Electronic Patient Record program, and this is really about a key part of our digital strategy. We've heard already about the strong financial management that we have, and an area of work that's really that I'm really keen on is how we personalise care and make sure that the care we provide to our patients and our citizens meets them where they are and is appropriate for them as individuals, rather than just a straitjacket approach to the way we work. And as I've said, continue to play a key part in our local system. So I'm going to move on to our estates challenge, because that, of course, is the major key challenge and risk for us as an organisation. I'm sure majority of people on the call will be aware of the RAC, reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, which was a product that was used in construction in the 1960s and 1970s, and it was really because of its insulating properties. It's become clear that it wasn't as robust as perhaps it was thought at the time. And in fairness, at the time of the construction of our hospital, it was considered to be a temporary hospital, and the engineers had considered it to have a 30-year lifespan. We now know that we have overstayed our welcome in the building. We've been in this building now for 52 years. So that contributes to the challenges that we are experiencing. We have seen that nearly a third of our planks in the building, that's just over 5,400, are showing signs of damage or deterioration. These are referred to as defects, and also we are seeing deflection in some of the structural supports that exist as well. And the Institute of Structural Engineers, through its Standing Committee of Structural Safety, has recommended that load-bearing planks, of which we have about 20,000, cannot be confirmed to be in good position, and therefore we need to correct those. And so this infographic really just describes the key issues that we're experiencing, and we're trying to manage as we go through the next period to make sure we are safe. So I'm going to discuss some of the things that we are doing about that in terms of managing the RAC challenge. We're working closely with independent structural engineers to make sure that the actions we're taking are based on latest knowledge, research and experience. And we're working with a range of RAC hospitals across the country to do that, as well as with the NHS England RAC programme. We are structurally supporting load-bearing RAC planks, and we are taking a risk-based approach so that we address the most affected areas first. We're planning a rolling programme of decant to enable us to access the roof ceiling and ceiling spaces to install structural steel. So the decant programme is really about how we empty wards so that we can then go in, our engineers can go in and have a good time to really put in the structural supports required. Trying to do that whilst we have patients and colleagues in a particular area, as you can imagine, it will take longer and not necessarily the most efficient way of working. And so we have a programme that will enable us to start to move wards around, and so that we can empty it to enable engineers to go in. We're also going to be applying external coating to our roof areas targeted areas, and the previous slide showed you the challenges we have with water leaks, so trying to build in some fail-safes around that. Now, one of the things that's really key around this is that this is going to be noisy and disruptive work. It is already noisy and disruptive work, but we're working hard to make sure we minimise the impact both on our patients and our colleagues who are working in the hospital. And we've are continuing that work programme just to keep everybody safe. So I'll move on to, but what does the longer term look like? Because we can't continue just supporting defective planks. Our ambition is to have a new hospital on our current estate, and we have the space for that. But it's an opportunity for us to invest that will enable us to not just address the immediate challenges I've already described, but will enable us to have something that's fit for the future and deliver on a range of strategic priorities. So our key ambitions for a new hospital include being the first to be Europe's first carbon neutral hospital. We want to be fully digitally enabled, both in our hospital and as a community services provider, with full digital infrastructure and capabilities on all our sites. We want to be a place for everyone, so we play a very important role in helping our local communities to thrive, which is a key part of the economic regeneration for Keighley, for example. Because we sit on 43 acres of land, we do have that capacity to accommodate a new hospital, which we know that we have the potential to be able to do that within 5 years from start to finish, whilst the existing hospital continues to function. And so that's where our focus is and what we're trying to deliver. And Donna talked about our focus about landing the finances to enable us to do that. And our plan also includes making sure that the newest buildings we have on our site will be incorporated into the design of a new hospital. So our next steps with regards to all of this is that we continue to work with colleagues nationally around our proposals for a new hospital. We are awaiting confirmation of the funding, and there's a lot of work that we are doing, but also our place and system partners, even in the ICS, are working with us to raise awareness and really emphasise the critical nature of a new hospital for Airedale. We have just commenced the development of our second modular building that will be a non-clinical workspace that will then enable us to free up ward for the decamp programme that I mentioned earlier. And we continue with other projects to ensure that we can continue to improve our service offer beyond just hospital buildings. We already have some new developments, so we have opened our £15 million modular development, which now houses our ICU and offers up to 15 beds. And included in that modular building is a 30-bedded ward area that the respiratory unit will be moving into. In the spring, we also opened our new Laminar flow theatres. It's the same as the barn theatres that Donna referred to earlier. And that facility is being used mainly for orthopaedics and orthopaedic surgery. And that in turn offers more space for our trauma and breast surgical patients. And we're currently in the throes of providing some decant facility for our endoscopy unit. And again, that's really part of our decant programme so that we can make safe the area that endoscopy currently occupy, and then they'll move back into the area once that is safe. But there's a lot more that we are doing beyond buildings and so on. There are works ongoing to finalise and modernise our cardiac catheterisation laboratory. Rob has already talked about the work that our urgent community response team have already done, and we can see scope to really build and develop on that, and really keen to help people stay at home healthy. And that way we can free up capacity for those who are very unwell and need to be in the hospital. We were recently re-accredited as a veteran aware trust with the work that we do with our armed forces advocate to make sure that veterans are properly supported and we are meeting the needs of current serving members of the armed forces. We've recently completed the refurbishment of our Haematology and Oncology Day unit, And that's been a major achievement in the last period, and it will increase and improve the patient experience for those who need to make use of that facility. I mentioned earlier the development of our electronic patient record, and that's going to be a focus for us over the next 18 months to really transform the way we deliver services. We've recently created dedicated resource into our emergency department focused specifically on frail patients, and we know that they make up a significant proportion of our patient group, given the local demographics. And so our aim is to make sure that we can enable discharge back home as soon as possible when safe to do that, and avoid hospital admission. We want to ensure that patients don't come in and stay unnecessarily when actually we could provide care for them at home in collaboration with social care and other care teams out in the community. And we are working on the development of a state-of-the-art helideck that will be situated near the emergency department and will be funded by the Help charity, and work is underway to scope what that looks like, and we hope to commence the work programme on that in the spring. So my final offer really in this space is really that our focus is all about modernising our facilities and making sure that we continue to provide good quality healthcare well into the future. We want to create a sustainable, digitally enabled environment for all our colleagues to work in. And we want to continue to transform our services and ensure that we personalise the care that we provide. This is very much about reaching beyond our hospital walls and making sure that the communities that we serve across the 700 square miles that we serve are appropriately supported, and that we are a key player as an anchor institution in supporting the local area for employment and economic development now and in the future. And most importantly, making sure that we are where we need to be, and that is here when people need us. So thanks everybody for listening. We can move on to questions. I'll hand back to you now, Andrew.
Thank you, and thanks to Feluke and Karen for their presentations alongside the plaudits that I gave to the earlier presenters. Really appreciated. So clearly we've shared a lot of information and a lot of highlights. I guess now it'd be great to hear from you, those members present and colleagues that are on the at this meeting, to hear from you. Just whilst you're either putting your questions in chat or putting your hands up, one thing I'd like to draw to your attention is a document. I'm going to raise it up on screen, which is an annual report summary, which will be provided on a link with websites along with the recording of this meeting and the response to the questions and answers. That summary provides a little more flavour and a bit more information on some of the things we've discussed tonight. It's really all the things that we're proud of that we've achieved within that year 2021-22, and it also reiterates some of the statistics that we've covered during the course of this discussion. So please don't be shy. Please either put your hand up or put your question in the chat facility. There are a couple of questions that we've received from people, and indeed one of those is actually here in the meeting. So Pauline Sharp, rather than me read out your question, would you like to summarise and raise your question in person, or would you like me to read it out?
I'm unmuted now, am I, Andrew? That's fine. Yes, if you read it out initially, but to preempt the question, I am concerned about engagement with the membership. I believe Karen asked them, encourage people to become members. But why should we? Because we don't know what's going on. We really don't get a full engagement. I sent you the Bradford engagement, and I think it's a perfect way that we could engage. And I do hope you will look at it, all of you, and see if we can bring this forward for Airedale. I'm very proud of Airedale. I was proud to be a governor, and it's such an innovative hospital. There's so much going on, and we need to shout about it. Lots of people I speak to who are already members haven't heard, I didn't know that. So please, let's do something about it. And And you can read my question because it's something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, so your question, Pauline, is, and I'll focus just on the question bit rather than the preamble to it, is what plans do the Council of Governors have to proactively engage with the membership going forward? I do appreciate there is Facebook and Twitter, etc., but it's then all down to the members to access. We live in very difficult times which require governors to reach out to membership and general public. So I think as the questions posed at the Council of Governors, it's appropriate to invite Karen Ellison, the lead governor, to respond to that question.
Hi, Paul. Am I off mute? Yes. Hi, Pauline. I think you've asked a similar question last time I was at the AMM. It has been a difficult time with COVID. We found it very difficult to do anything, as you can appreciate. But it is, it's part of our engagement plan going forwards, that we want to engage more. We want to do things in person. So in essence, once the hospital fully reopens to visitors and the various departments are able to safely run engagement events, then our plan is to ensure that members are also informed about these events. We did send out a communication earlier this week, which I'm very grateful to Jerry having penned with Linda's assistance, and we hope to do more of that. But that is only part of the story. We really have missed these events where we've been able to interact in person with the wider membership. I see, and several of the other governors do, see their PPG people and local people around their area, but not specific events that invite the whole of the membership. It's more of sort of jurisdictional constituency type engagement. So yes, it's on our agenda, and it will hopefully increase, and the events will be publicised.
I'm not on about it. Sorry, I am really not on about events. COVID was the perfect chance for people to put forward emails to the membership about what was going on, what should be done. Please look at the Bradford example, because we're hiding behind COVID too much. COVID is the thing that I wanted information from the hospital. I got it from Bradford. I got some from Airedale on the website and I had to do it. But these emails are so good. And we haven't had this. I've had one a month at least from Bradford, which I'm a member. And we know what's going on, and we know your problems and things like that. But it just seems that you're not sort of even putting things up to do remotely. We've all had to learn to do that. In our village, we do communicate remotely. We've been able to do it. And you're a big...
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
Done it, but you haven't done it, and I'm sorry, I just am not happy with that.
So Pauline,
okay, well, I've taken your point. I mean, we have used social media a lot, which many people may not be au fait with, and that is fine. I take that point, but I will look at the Bradford stuff for sure. I'm also a member of Bradford Trust and the Lees Trust, and also Harrogate Trust, interestingly, and everybody does things slightly differently. We have hinged more on social media and leaflets. Certainly I let my PPG know of what's going on, but I will take your point, Pauline. Thank you. Did you want to come in, Andrew?
Yeah, can I just
back on that? If you just send an email of how to use the social media, it would help, and what to link into, because lots of people don't know. I've finished on that, Andrew. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think your feedback's really grateful, Pauline, and I think it is something that you've kept us on our toes with in previous AGMs, and I think you would recognise that progress has been made. That since the last one, the Trust's got a new, easier to access website, which has got lots of information, including after this meeting, the details of this, the recording of this meeting, the summary that I referenced earlier, and the response to questions and answers. I think the key thing I was just going to raise is that we need to distinguish between what are trust communication and what are governor communications, because I think they're slightly different. And Katie Lister, I don't know if you want to add to that thought in a moment, but clearly the Trust make a number of communications on a very regular basis. There are press releases and other information going onto the website regularly, because we've got full-time employees who are able to do that. That's their remit, and that's important that the Trust has that engagement and communication with the wider public and the community that we serve. I think we should recognise that not all the responsibility for communications falls at our Council of Governors door. I think it's right and proper that they have a role by way of receiving feedback from the membership, as the diagram in Karen's presentation covered, and also imparting information into the community, just as many governors do through PPGs and on other forums, perhaps some of which aren't necessarily visible to members like yourself, Pauline. So, Katie, do you want to just add anything to that thought process that I've just outlined there?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Pauline, for your question. I hope you can all hear me all right. Yes, so we have got a new website which Fiona and my team was particularly instrumental in, and I think looks great. We certainly do what we can across all our channels, but recognising the point that Pauline's making, we're also very happy to work closely with the governors to help them translate some of what our public-facing news stories might mean to constituent members as well. And certainly Jerry and Karen are aware of this, and Robert Minton-Taylor in particular, and Linda, actually. We've just been talking to Linda about it this week. So absolutely take it on board. We continue to put out what we can, where we can, but always really helpful to hear of other suggestions of places we can do that. And Pauline, I'd love to see this Bradford communication. That would be great.
Said Andrew's got it. What it is, I'll distinguish. It is for the members, that one. I'm not complaining about what you've got on the website. I can find out lots and lots of things there. But this is members' information. It says to all members, feedback if you want to. It's not net, and it's from the chief exec puts a bit in. It's Mel Pickup's weekly roundup we get, which is lovely. Right. Yeah, and that is good, but it is addressed to the members. And if we're going to get more members, they would be happy to get something like this. Just use the best in other people's stuff. It's so good. This is the point. You've so much to offer, or we have at Airedale, so much to offer. You're leading in the technology. You've got physios in prisons remotely, haven't you? All sorts of things like this. That's joking aside. There we are, because I might be in prison after this.
Well, we will happily pinch with pride from other organisations who are doing well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd echo what others have said about thanks for reinforcing this and keeping us on our toes on this. It's an area we have made some improvements, but clearly there's further we can go, and we will look at the other options that are available. And hopefully by this next time the annual members meeting, we can get your views as to how much we've progressed in the 12 months since.
I've sent it to the membership office. I've sent it to Chief Executive's PA.
We've got it. We're on it.
You've got it.
We're on it.
There somewhere.
We're on it.
It's only an example of the one a month we receive. So there you go.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for that. So, are there other questions from people present? Either they want to raise their hand or put into the chat facility. I can see a hand's gone up, and I can see that hand is from Christine. Christine Hiley, I would imagine.
It is indeed, Andrew. Yes, hi. I've just, on the same subject, I have just put a comment in the chat because I thought the September Governor update was excellent. I think that's just the sort of thing that members probably would welcome on a more regular basis than perhaps it's been done in the past. And that regular update might be a way of stimulating more two-way communication between members and governors, and maybe encourage more people to become members if they know they're going to get regular newsy stories, if you like. So yeah, I'm with Pauline on that one.
Thank you for sharing your views on that. It's good to hear that. Clearly, the more we hear about how important this is, the more that can shape our thinking in our approach in the future. Other questions from the floor, or from the virtual floor, I should say. We did have another question submitted from someone, Brian Thompson. I don't think Brian's actually on the meeting. Brian is also a former governor of the trust. He had two parts to his question. The second one was, the hospital used to run very successful events for its members pre-COVID. Do you intend to run them again in the future? I think we've probably actually already answered that one. And then the other part to Brian's question was, is there a possibility that the car parking charges will be reduced, especially for visitors and patients who only spend an hour at the hospital? When are the charges due to be reviewed? So I'm going to invite Rob Aitchison, Co and Deputy Chief Executive, to respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So very, very cruel of you to make me follow that with a question about car parking, but I'll have a go. In terms of Brian's question, I think that just pulling out the key bits, just focusing on patient parking. In answer to Brian's question, we last changed our prices in April 2017. And I think just obviously in line with previous years, we'll review again during the next 12 months. There's lots of detail, and if kind of members are particularly energised on this subject and are interested, I'm happy to talk in a bit more detail about exemptions and reductions in terms of patients who visit the hospital. Specifically in relation to Brian's question regarding the 15-minute limit, no, not specifically. We don't have any plans necessarily to reduce that or to increase it, should I say, at the moment. But again, as part of that next review, I'm more than happy to feed that feedback along the lines of Brian's comment there, and we will consider that as we would always do based on feedback. I think it probably would just be remiss of me not to mention the obvious fact that parking charges were suspended during COVID. We reinstated charges for patients from October 2021, and I think it's just worth saying, I think the cost of the suspension of parking during COVID was met by the government, and part of the prompt around the change in October 21 was around the effectively the ceasing of that funding coming into the organisation. I think members will probably appreciate it's probably fairly well rehearsed, the discussion around kind of where parking charges and income goes in terms of how it funds services within the hospital. So I won't necessarily address that, Andrew, but I'm more than happy to pick up any follow-ons from that if it's helpful.
Thank you, Rob. I think that was a very comprehensive answer without getting into too much depth, unless people particularly want that. Obviously, Brian's not on the call, so he's not present at this meeting, so we can't get a sense of whether it answers his entire points in its entirety. But clearly, if anyone else has got anything they want to add, now is their opportunity to do so. Linda Dobson.
Hi, yes, just to say that Katie and I met earlier this week, and that's one of the things that we discussed actually, was ensuring that people were aware of the various ways that they could claim or be exempt from parking and travel expenses. And we talked about preparing a leaflet that governors could take to the planned meetings that we're going to be holding in outpatients again, and we could distribute them there, but they also need to be available at the cafes and things. So we'd already considered that. It was something that Katie was going to take a good look at. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got another hands up, which is now from Joanna Barkwith. Joanna.
Hello, nice to see everybody, albeit virtually. It was really just to go back, Rob, to parking. Sorry, I know how much you love this topic. Just in regards to exemptions, currently disabled visitors don't have to pay for parking. Currently disabled staff do. Is there any plans to equalise that up one way or another?
So we've got John Wilson with us, who I think his hand may well have shot up in
It
response.
has shot up. Yeah, I've just seen it. Yeah.
I think you raise an interesting point, actually, John, and I think it's a conversation that we should have, because obviously it takes us back to some of the principles around, you know, subsidising particularly patient parking for those who are disabled versus staff. And I think you raise a really good point, which at least prompts a discussion in response to that. So clearly I can't say yes or no in response to that, but I think it's an interesting point you make, and I would hope some of that is picked up through some of our inclusion network work anyway, and I think it should prompt a conversation for us. But I think I'll pause and maybe see if John wants to add to that, but I think it is a good point you make.
John, do you want to
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, my camera's not working, so you won't be able to see my face, but hopefully you can hear me okay. Just from my previous role, I'm fairly certain that disabled blue badge holders for staff is free parking now.
Is there any blue badge parking within the staff car parks though, or are staff taking up disabled spaces within the rest of the parking allocation?
There's approximately 58 disabled parking bays across the trust area. Okay. Obviously, staff don't have to use them; they can use the normal bays if they're able to get in and out of the car. Okay, but they should receive a parking pass free of charge if they contact the kiosk or the car parking team. They shouldn't have to pay for any parking if you've got a blue badge.
Okay, that I might take that back as co-chair of the network group, the disabled network group. I will take that back and make sure that we let our members know that that is something that they can take advantage of. Thank you. It certainly wasn't something I was aware of, unless that's changed. I haven't been on site for good 2 years or so. So
I think it demonstrates the benefit of the question, Joanna, actually, because I think there is a really important point about your role in the inclusion network and that not necessarily being knowledge to you. So I think, welcome your point there, and we'll pick up with John and with John's previous team.
Yeah, and I'll put it on our next network agenda. I'll do that now immediately. Thanks very much.
No, thank you. So are there any more questions that people would like to raise this afternoon? I can't see any further hands up, so we've exhausted all the questions that we had in advance of the meeting. We've given an opportunity for questions at the end of the meeting and also during it of the auditor before he left. So in the absence of any further questions, I'll now draw the meeting to a close. I'll thank everyone for their attendance, colleagues, board members, governors, but also colleagues who are just members of the trust who've taken the opportunity out of their working day to attend. That's really appreciated. And also members of the public and our wider membership. We really have welcomed the opportunity for a conversation with you to raise things that were on your particular mind. As I say, just to reiterate, the document, an annual summary, annual report summary 2021-2 will be published on the website soon. The recording of this meeting will be published on the website, and along with the typed responses to the questions and answers for anyone who doesn't want to sit through the whole recording to be able to work out what, and also the additional questions we've taken during the meeting. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and the weekend that's nearly with us, and we'll look forward to future conversations, whether it's at other member events that we're able to arrange between now and the next annual members meeting at a date to be confirmed at some point in 2023. So thank you, everybody. All the best, and we'll see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.